Hi everyone, Jeremy Scott here. Welcome to another episode of the Re-Emerging Earth podcast. Once again, I'm in the park. However, no coffee today. The staff of the cafe are having a wedding. One of the staff's getting married today, so they're all aware of that. So they'll be closed today and tomorrow. Oh well, not to worry. I hope they're having a wonderful time. It's a nice day for it. As I'm recording this, it's a Friday. Sun's out. It's a lovely spring morning, I would say. So that makes life uncomplicated when it's like this, nice and simple. And that's my theme for today, really, is simplicity. And in particular, what I would like to talk about in this episode is why is it within spiritualism or spiritual practices, why does it have to be so ritualistic, and why in particular do these rituals have to be so complicated at times? Well, so it seems anyway. Back when I first started to get into Reiki in the 2000s, I was drawn to it by a book I read, and I thought, well, to be honest, because I'd lived in Germany, I thought Reiki was a German word because it's spelt in that way. It looks like a German word. So I was expecting it to be some kind of German way of thinking or something along those lines. So I was very much surprised to find out it was Japanese. Then I started to look into it, and at that time, I think maybe same today, the internet was filled with all kinds of different Reiki styles. You had everything from Kundalini to Gothic to Celtic to God knows what. Atlantic Reiki I think I saw at one time as well, or Atlantis Reiki I think I saw at one time. That's fair play, you know, I mean, I'm sure they all work in their own way. I've got nothing against that, it's just a little bit unusual. And when I looked into it, a lot of them were full of rituals which I consider to be very complicated, long drawn out rituals to do this, that and the other, and it kind of put me off, you know, because I like things nice and simple. Keep it simply simple is my version of KISS. It's what I like to say, and that's what I've lived by all these years, really. I like the simple life. I don't like it complicated. Complicated gets in the way of things. So as I said, I was looking for a style of Reiki, and I eventually found the one that I wanted, and that was with Taggart King of Reiki Evolution. And his style of Reiki, or rather the style of Reiki, no, it wasn't his style, it was the style of Reiki he was teaching and still does teach today, is the Usui Reiki system, or original Japanese Reiki as I like to call it, because that lineage stems from one of Usui's original students, Suzuki-san, and she eventually passed that knowledge on to a Westerner. Not remember the name, to be honest, at this moment in time, but that's how it started to progress from Japan to the West, this particular style of Reiki, not Reiki in general. She was very reluctant to do that at first, but then she relented, because at that time I do believe she was pretty much in her mid-90s, maybe a little bit older, and she would like to, or she wanted to preserve the teachings of Mikao Usui. And the Ryoho, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but the Reiki Ryoho Institute in Japan tends to follow a different path, a slightly different path to what Mikao Usui taught, and it's more based on what is taught here in the West in general from Mrs. Takata, because it went from Mrs. Takata back to Japan. So there's a thing for you. But what I liked about this style was the simplicity of it. Yes, there are rituals, There are things that you do. You have the precepts, but there's other maybe little rituals that you do. But they're very simple, basic rituals in that sense, straightforward, practical. There's no fluff, if you like, and that's what attracted me to the particular style of Reiki that I am now what's known as a Shinpiden or Shinpiden, Shinpiden. Shinpiden, I've never really known how to really pronounce that, if I'm being honest, but basically it means master teacher. Yeah, and I've always been like that, as I said, to look for the more simple routes, the shortcuts in life, if you like, but ones that are just as, if not more effective than the ones that are normally taught. However, I got to thinking, well, why is it then that a lot of these other Reiki modalities, and not just Reiki, but other spiritual practices and so on, why are they so complicated with their rituals? Why are they so ritualistic or ritual heavy, you could even call them, in that sense? You know, even if you go obviously further back than Reiki, if you go into the Buddhist tradition, where I believe Reiki actually originated. Yeah, in Buddhism today, in a lot of places, you've got different ways, different styles of Buddhism and so on, but they are also very complicated in some ways. They've got a lot of prayers and chants and other rituals that they follow on a daily basis, multiple times a day sometimes. You know, and as Hindu and a lot of other Eastern religions are the same. And when we look at our own Western religions, Middle Eastern religions, exactly the same. There's a lot of rituals involved, and I prefer just a straightforward, let's get it done. You know, not necessarily to take up time or to shorten the time period. I don't mind the length of time. It's all the little things you have to remember. I was exactly the same with the tarot reading. Yes, I learned all the Rider-Waite meanings of the tarot. Then I've recent times learned a much better way, a more intuitive way of reading cards, which is what I do now, and it's a lot better. Still use some of the Rider-Waite sort of meanings as hints, as prompts maybe, but they help to deepen my readings. But basically I follow a more simplistic and less fluffy kind of route. But as I say, why is it then? Why is it so ritualistic? Why are these practices so full of different things that you have to do and can't do, and do this or you can't do that, you must do this for so many lengths of time, years or whatever, before you can move on to that? Why is all that? Let's go back to the Reiki story. When Mrs. Takata first brought it to the West, she lived in Hawaii at the time, and she herself was the only Reiki master teacher in the West at that time, and she was very reluctant to pass on that knowledge to anyone else. Eventually she did. Then you got these ones who felt perhaps a little bit self-important, felt a little bit egoistic. They were charging large sums of money to train people up to the different levels of Reiki, especially to the master teacher level. I think at some time I saw quoted looking like $50,000 at one point, before everything's kind of like tailed off. Now you can, let's say, you can't do a course, but you can buy a master teacher certificate for 99p, or do a quick course, online course for $9.99, this kind of thing. So it's gone quite the opposite way in that sense. But I think a lot of it has to do with ego. In the sense of, when there's different styles, different modalities created or invented or evolved and so on, people want to put their mark on it to make it more unique, to make it stand out from everybody else. This is the better style of Reiki, you can do this. or this is a better style of yoga, so you can do it this way, and make them stand out, because then they will get noticed and get more clients and so on. And that's more to do with marketing, I suppose, in that sense, than Reiki, or than ego. So it's more about making money out of it. And I think that has a large part to play in it as well. Being the purple cow, standing out from the crowd, so to speak, so that you do get noticed and attract the clients and the customers and so on that you want. Now, I can see the relevance of that, because if you, depending on which spiritual practice you follow, if you go on the internet, you're going to see numerous, an untold number of websites that all look pretty much the same, and they all have maybe a standard look or a standard practice or whatever, and the odd few that stand out because they do something different, or they offer something different. And I've been caught out in this as well, if I'm being honest, especially when it comes to the marketing side, wanting to be different so I can attract clients and so on. But it doesn't always work, because people will come along, people like myself will come along and say, oh, they're just using that as a marketing gimmick. Now, and that is true. In that sense, it's true. So a lot of it has to do with ego, and also the marketing. It's a lot to do with self-importance, or a sense, I should say, of identity. They want to be known as the go-to person. They want to stand out in the crowd. They want to be the one in front of hundreds, maybe even thousands in an audience, performing, entertaining the masses, so to speak. They're the ones who want to charge high-end prices and fees for what they do. Oh, okay, that's their journey. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I have no judgmental opinion on that. It's not for me to judge what they do. If that's the way they want to go, that's the way they want to go. It's as simple as that. I prefer a more simple route. Whereas I promote myself in a different way. I wouldn't say I promote myself in an understated way. Some of the adverts I put out are eye-catching and so on. But perhaps it's the goal that I have in mind, which is perhaps a little bit different. Yes, I want clients. Yes, I want people to come and contact me and so on like that. But I'm not aiming to be the world's #1 at what I do. I'm not aiming to be world famous. I'm not aiming to have all the trappings of abundance, the material wealth and so on. I've got no interest in that. My interest is being able to help people like yourselves to improve their lives in whatever shape or form I'm able to do that through what I do. And whereas I have a fair price for what I do, I believe it's a fair price because of the time and effort that I put into it. It's not something that I focus on, because I said, I don't want to complicate people's lives. I know people can't always afford what they would like to have. When it comes to like a spiritual modality, a spiritual practice, they can't always afford the prices that some coaches, some tarot readers, mediums and so on charge. So there is more than enough possibilities out there for those who charge lower prices, same as there's more than enough possibilities out there to charge higher prices, or somewhere in between. So keeping it simple for me works in that way. I'm somewhere in the middle, I suppose, in that sense. And I just feel if you're going to complicate things, it puts people off. If they look into what you offer, Yeah, and it's full of ritual that maybe doesn't attract them. It puts people off like it did for me in the early days. Then again, not everybody thinks like I do they? Some people enjoy having all the rituals and things. They think they're getting their money's worth. I mean, if you go on these, not that I've been on one, I'm just going by what people have told me, go on one of these retreats, whether that's in your own country or in Bali or somewhere like that, they can cost tens of thousands of dollars. And in all honesty, for that weekend or a few days away, with what they teach, actual teach, you could probably do that in a day. In a much sort of closer to home environment, or even online or something like that. But what they are actually selling, I suppose, is the experience that you have being with others, practicing with others, and all the different workshops that they do. There's some very, very good retreats out there. And yes, and I would say if I had the funds, I'd be doing one of those retreats, if I'm being honest, because of what they offer, which is value for money. However, I feel, like I said before, the same as when Reiki first started here in the West, that some people do get a sense of self-importance, especially when it's something new, and then they put it out there and at overinflated prices and so on, and their courses and so on are maybe bits and pieces that they've borrowed from elsewhere, let's put it that way, stuff they've read in books or other things that they've learned and so on, and they've added to their courses, whatever, to build it out, to puff it out, to build it up a bit, to make it a bit more attractive, and then they can charge these prices. I guess at the end of the day, it's down to you, isn't it? It's down to you and me as individuals whether we want to follow that or not. I'm just saying, spirituality doesn't need to be so complicated. It doesn't need to be so ritualistic. You can get the same experience without all the fluff. Maybe I'm being a bit more practical and pragmatic in that way, which is strange. I don't think I've got anything like that in my birth chart, but I don't think I've got any Capricornian sort of planet or system or whatever in my birth chart anyway. So, but I am a double Sagittarian, so maybe that comes into it, as well as a double Scorpio. So for me, it's always about shortcuts, I suppose, as I said earlier on, and finding ways to get the same experience, the same effect, if not better, but with an easier and perhaps less expensive route. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about that? Or you can comment, let me know. I'll be more than happy to read what your views are and to receive those thoughts for either way, pro or con. I think that's enough for now. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this sunny morning. I'll have to go somewhere else for my coffee, but not to worry. There's one or two places I can go to where I enjoy having a nice good cup of coffee as well. Until next time, guys, so wonderful to be able to speak with you again. Until then, namaste.